All right, we'll kick this thing off. So first and foremost, welcome Vanguard. Welcome to all of our guests we have on the call. I'm Sergeant Nixon from the 330th Special Warfare Recruiting Squadron coming out of E-Flight. Today we're going to have a really good detailed discussion here. We have a special guest, Master Sergeant Tiffany Zaloudek. How you doing today, ma'am?
There we go. I'm great.
Awesome. There we go.
I also brought Master Sergeant Jones with me here today. He's
nice.
a SERE specialist as well. You guys had a lot of really good questions that you guys asked, and there are going to be some answers that he can definitely give a lot more information and relevant information on. So I'll end up passing some of those along to him too.
Copy that. Appreciate that. Welcome to you as well, Sergeant Jones. Appreciate both of you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be on here with us. So everyone, as Master Sergeant Zaloudek said, this is going to be a Q&A type chat. We already have a bunch in the chat, and I will check the chat and get those, and we'll cover them at the end. And what I'll do is call on you at that point, unmute yourself, ask your question, go from there. If there's like a long pause, I'll just ask the question and we'll go from there. This is being recorded, so if anyone has any objections to that, just let me know right now. Other than that, we'll keep pressing forward. So make sure your mics are muted, and we'll go ahead and get into it. So what we'll do is split these. We can kind of split these questions up. Sergeant you and Sergeant Jones. This will be a question. Perfect. Oh, am I lagging? Mm-hmm. I'm lagging. I got a solution to that. This should fix it. Log in from my phone. All right, let me mute this. Is everybody? Stand by. Switch to my phone here. Okay, what about now?
It seems to be better.
Okay. All right, we press forward. Changed devices, another location, so here we go. All right, ma'am. So the first question we'll go ahead and kick it off with for the both of you. So where are you from? What's your upbringing type? And what made you decide that you wanted to pursue SERE?
Okay, so I'm gonna giving like my whole life spiel in a very short couple of minutes, but I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. That's where I grew up. What my dad always said, it's the show me state. So you better show me through your actions, not through your words. So that's the mindset I kind of grew up in. Both my parents were grown up Catholic. So I was kind of raised in a Catholic Christian household. So my parents had a very traditional way of thinking, and at least back in the day. So I went to a Christian high school, and what was kind of expected of me was to find the love of my life during high school and college, get my degree, get married during that time, pop out kids, and that's the rest of my life. And I never really fit into some type of mold, I guess you can say, or box. And I felt really stuck after high school. I absolutely loved high school. I played every sport you can possibly imagine. Came from a very athletic background where my dad would wake us up every morning and take us running with him. You know, broke a lot of state records in track, and so therefore I was given a full ride track scholarship for college. Sadly, the college was only 15 minutes away. I wanted to go half the US away, but my parents were okay with that. I was the oldest, of course, at that time. And after my first year of college, I felt lost, like completely hopeless and lost. I didn't know what I wanted to get into degree-wise. I had no clue what I wanted to do with my life. I wasn't following this plan like everyone else was. And so I decided not to go back after my first year. I wanted to find something that lit a fire in me. And so I ended up just working full time and working out with a really good buddy of mine who actually was joining the Air Force to go combat control. And he ended up going Army instead. Rest in peace. No, okay. But he actually got me inspired about the Air Force. And I ended up looking into it and going to his recruiter. And I immediately felt some type of passion inside of me for this is something that I wanted to do. Of course, I told him about my background and how I like being physically challenged, and I showed him all my track records. And I wanted to become a PJ initially. So this is 2006, and of course, during that time, females were not allowed in those jobs. So he kind of brushed off some dust on a SERE brochure and was like, well, this is really similar and like the next best thing. So back then they didn't have a lot of information. And I understand back then, sometimes you heard some of the most wazoo things from recruiters, but I really think my guy had his head on straight. He told me everything he knew and he researched it. I did a lot of research with the Go SERE we had at that time. And I fell in love with the job. And so basically that's where I am now in SERE. So.
Very nice, very nice. Sergeant Jones, are you with us, sir?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear. So
Awesome.
where are you? Yes, sir. Where are you from, upbringing type, and why did you choose SERE?
So yeah, I'm from a small town in East Texas. Pretty normal upbringing. You know, lived with my parents, my little brother, and everything, and we had just a normal kind of small East Texas town feel. Like Sergeant Zaloudek, I played sports growing up. I was real involved in soccer and ended up playing at the collegiate level for a little bit, but also very similar to her, the college route just wasn't working out. So after about a year and a half, I was kind of thinking in my head, like, this is not for me. I want to be more active and outside and like have more hands-on versus just sitting around in a classroom all the time. So I started looking at some of the different options that were out there, and I had a few buddies that had gone into the military as well, and I'd never really thought about it, but at that point in time I was looking for something, and I just gotten married, so it's like I needed to make a decision. So I went and talked to an Air Force recruiter and grabbed a couple of brochures. I grabbed one for SERE, PJ, combat control, TAC-P, and granted this was like 16 years ago. So again, the information that was available wasn't, there wasn't a whole lot for really any of those jobs. But after a couple days, I mulled over everything and talked to my wife, and I was like, well, I want something that's challenging, and I like the outdoors. I like being outside. So SERE looked like it kind of checked all those boxes just from the brochure. I didn't even really know what the job was. So I just went with my gut and signed up for it, did the pass test, came in, and it's been, 16 years. It's been a good ride. And then really the main thing that's kept me in the career field is just the amount of opportunity that is available in SERE, and I can't speak as much to the other career fields that you guys recruit for, but I know with SERE, I mean, there is something for everybody in it. And, any part of that acronym, the survival, evasion, resistance, and escape, there is something there for everybody. And really, as I've grown up in the career field, another interesting thing is that we're really involved in personnel recovery. And that was initially something I didn't realize as much, because I think like a lot of people, I thought it was all centered around the survival piece of it, but that's it is there, but that's such a small piece of the overall job and kind of the direction of the career field. We're really personnel recovery experts. So we're helping with planning and support and all of those types of things that make a recovery mission successful. We're just not the ones going out on the actual mission. So that's really what's kept me in that. And then it's just an awesome career field. We're a pretty small career field, so you pretty much know everybody in it. and it is a family. You know, it really is. Everybody has each other's backs. So hopefully that answers your question there, Sergeant Nixon.
Absolutely, absolutely. Appreciate that, sir. And I got to kind of ask another question in regards to what you brought up, because it's one on the list. So what are the different roles that you can go into within SERE?
So there's a few different, if you want to call them roles, I guess. You know, a lot of people think of SERE as just like the typical instructor role, you know, formal schoolhouses for survival and everything. And that is part of it. And really everybody in the career field starts off kind of in that capacity because, you know, you have to be able to pass along the information you've learned. You know, the Air Force isn't training you to be an expert in all these various things just to make you an expert in it. They need you to be able to pass those things along to the people who are high risk of isolation. So you're talking air crew members, any kind of ejection seat flyers, special warfare airmen. So anybody who's operating in an area that puts them outside the wire, in harm's way, and we have to be able to give them those skills. So one aspect is the instructional, but then there's a whole slew of other opportunities. So after everybody does their stint at Fairchild, you know, you branch out. So we branch out across the globe, and we have people that are working at operational support squadrons, which is just a typical squadron on a base, a flying squadron, and you're running the SERE program for a wing. And so you're working with the aircrew members almost on a daily basis and making sure that they're getting all the training and refresher training that they need. But you're also helping with pre-mission preparation and planning, and you're integrating a lot of what Intel does into some of the plans and programs. We also are heavily involved in a lot of personnel recovery exercises, and that's another area you can get into. We have locations where we have SERE specialists that really their main function is to plan large-scale major personnel recovery exercises. We also have individuals that work at rescue squadrons, RQSs. So they're teamed up with the rest of the Guardian Angel combat rescue officers and pararescuemen. And again, they're acting as the subject matter expert for all things SERE for that organization's efforts towards combat search and rescue. We do have members that work in Air Force Special Operations Command, Special Tactics Squadrons, contingency response groups, and we have specialized schools. And I know Sergeant Zaloudek can probably speak to this, but you know, SERE owns the test parachutist program for the Air Force. So we have members that are testing out new equipment as far as jumping it, so military free fall. We also have people that teach up in Alaska and specialize, you know, for a 4-year stint in, you know, really specialize in the Arctic survival aspect of things. So, I mean, we're kind of all over the place, but it kind of leaves it open and gives you a lot of options as an individual going in. And Sergeant Zaloudek, feel free to jump in at any time, because I know you have slightly different experiences than I do.
No, I mean, so Sergeant Jones did a really great job of explaining like the different jobs in a way. I would say a lot of SERE specialists kind of have a little bit of a niche, right? You have a specialized area that you kind of have a little bit more of a passion for, or you get driven into this kind of niche in the career field. Not always, but some do have something that they particularly really like compared to other aspects of SERE, or they're better at. So you might have some SERE specialists who will really kind of focus on the survival part of SERE. So they might work at water survival and they love that, or they might work at Arctic survival and stay in the field flights because they really have a passion for that survival side. You also have individuals who, you know, will work the resistance training and kind of stay within that realm. They'll be interrogation instructors. They might work at the JPRA later on and teach some other classes. You might have someone go down a personal recovery route where they do work maybe at the JPRA. They might do stints at, you know, deployed in Al-Udeid, working personal recovery out there. Like we all kind of have something that we kind of get driven into a little bit. Training as well. We have, a lot of SERE guys who are amazing instructors, and they're really great at mentoring and molding the next generation of SERE specialists. So a lot of them traditionally will kind of stay within, SERE specialist indoctrination training, like that 2 weeks, and then also work with, potentially SERE specialist and SERE specialist training to get them graduated. And then also someone like myself, I kind of was all over the place, honestly. Like, I love kind of so many different niches of it. So I did the survival route, I did interrogation route, and then I got stuck in the jumping world, which I will never complain about. And that's something too. We also do own the test parachuting program. We own the developmental test parachuting program. So there's two, one's developmental and one's operational. The PJs own the operational one, but we have a lot of SERE guys over there as well. And so with that, you are integrating new systems into the Air Force and new helmets and everything else. And so there's so many different routes. So what I'm saying is, like, when you guys explain to potential SERE specialists, right, who want to come in, if they're like, what, like, I do like the outdoors, but it's kind of really not my thing. Like, I kind of want to kick down doors. I still want to be SERE, but I might want to like teach some weapons training or like hand-to-hand combat and stuff. It's like, cool. So we have that lane that you can go into doing that in SERE. I mean, obviously you have to be all encompassing, but you can also do that route. Or like, hey, I really love SERE, but I really like jumping out of planes too. They can also kind of specialize a little bit more in that route. Now, right time, right place, making sure that you articulate these things and communicate with your leadership once you're in SERE that you want to go these routes, making sure you guys get the training that they're pressing forward, and getting these things happening. A lot of times that's how they get into these kind of specialized little lanes. So we have a choice of what we want to specialize in, yes and no. It's, think about it, it's Air Force needs. So at that time, if they need to send you to a Korea for a year, you're going to Korea for a year. If they don't have anyone for LUD, or if they need someone to go to Arctic survival and your time's up, you're going there. However, I think if you, just like anything, if you lean forward, you make sure that you are communicating with the right people, and you can say, hey, I really would like to work parachuting. You work extra time at the parachuting program, you get sent over there because you're very knowledgeable on it. All of a sudden you get some of the parachuting schools because you have all your, items up to date and your class 3 physical, you put yourself in that proper lane to get that. So for me, for you guys to articulate that to them, they really need to lean forward and be motivated to get in a particular lane and really make sure they're communicating with the right people. So I'm just saying there's so many different options though in SERE. You are supposed to be a subject matter expert in all of them, but traditionally at one point in time, you're kind of focusing on kind of like certain aspects of SERE, of the SERE.
And Sergeant Zaloudek is 100% right on that. And just to kind of piggyback off of what she was saying, if you're thinking about coming in for SERE, honestly, I wouldn't put too much. I mean, it's good to know some of that type of information, but I wouldn't think way too far down the road, because some of those avenues you can go down, you don't even know if you like it yet, and when you go through the pipeline and you get some experience in the career field after a while, you'll get a better idea of kind of what you want. And then, like Sergeant Zaloudek was saying, it boils down to that if you figure out a route that you want to go or something you're interested in, it comes down to that hard work and you putting in the time and being vocal about it. So I just wanted to add that on. I wouldn't overthink some of that too much, but just kind of have that in the back of your mind and know that there are a lot of options in the career field.
So one question here really quick that we just got: if a SERE specialist wanted to attend dive school, how would they be able to be a part of that opportunity? Here's the thing, like you can't as a recruiter guarantee anything, right? You can say like you have opportunities to, because that's like kind of where sometimes people get, they're like, well, my recruiter told me I'll be able to get dive school, and they go on kind of with this promise. So you can let them know the opportunities, and if it happens, it happens. So with this, if that's something that they want to go to dive school, the only way they really be able to go to that school is if after they're done with their time in the field flights and they've proven themselves to be a good SERE specialist and airman, they might be able to go help out at the water survival school at Fairchild, and or at least articulate that they want to go over there. And if they are able to go over to water survival and work over there and are there long enough, and if they get the dive slot available to them, and if they pass the PT test or, you know, the dive qualifications, then they'll be able to go through dive school if they pass dive school. So there's a lot of ifs, ands, buts, right? So that's why we always say there are opportunities, but again, a lot of them is in your hands. They're not going to send someone who doesn't know how to swim or who might not be the best instructor over to a dive school. And if you don't have, you know, a position open for it, or if they don't have dive school slots come down during that time, then sadly that's not going to be available to them.
Copy that. I see we have a few more questions in the chat. Definitely going to get to those. Sergeant Zaloudek, this question is for you. What were some of the challenges you faced overall and challenges faced as a woman while going through selection?
So the major question that I always get from women in particular is, what are the major differences for a woman going through SERE training compared to men? And I would say there was really none. I think that sometimes we want to think that there's going to be like major, huge differences, but there's really not. The one thing that I admire about SERE training and about all these special warfare jobs is that they're, the standards are the exact same across the board for everyone. So it leaves no room for, well, you know, she kind of did it, but then she didn't all the way or she made it with lesser standards. There's no question about it. And the cadre are some of the most professional, standout individuals who make sure to maintain the standards no matter what. Whether they might not agree with females in the career field or not, they all put that aside and they keep everyone maintaining to the standards. So I would say when it comes to training and the environment, there are no differences between what females and males have to do. However, of course, there is, you know, the fact that a different gender is going through a male-dominated career field. So the main obvious one is the gender, right? The gender difference. There's not many females that do go into SERE, let alone graduate SERE training. So it is kind of a little bit of an anomaly. It depends, you know, it depends on the attitudes of the individuals that they're going through the training with and might have to deal with. So there might be some gentlemen that are going through the course that particularly don't want females, you know, in their career field. And so some of the challenges that a female might have to go through is, you know, hearing a lot of negative talk about them being in the same training as them. They're gonna have to probably deal with some rumors from some individuals who are very insecure with themselves, stating as, you know, a female might be there or might be able to only pass or get through training because maybe she slept with an instructor, or maybe they need to meet a quota, or she's not, you know, they like let the standards, you know, they had easier standards for her or whatever it might be. So that's absolutely a thing that's going to happen. That's the reality, sadly, but that's just the world in general, right? You know, that happens with a lot of people, with everyone. So my biggest thing, I think, for women coming through is, you know, just to mentally kind of, I don't want to say prepare for the worst, but to have a really good support system in that sense, right? Have someone to talk to. I was luckily close to my parents, even though they didn't agree with me going into the military. They knew I was passionate about it, and they were there for me during those times where I was like, these gentlemen are making my life hell and they want me to quit, and they're telling me to quit on a daily basis. And, you know, with how difficult SERE training is already, I didn't want to deal with this, but that's kind of the nature of the beast. And what I just would always say to females, and I think, I mean, males, I'm sure go through this too. I cannot speak to that because obviously I'm not one, but I would say ignore the noise. You know, SERE training might be physically tough, but mentally I've seen so many other people quit because of mental things. So ignore the noise, head down, keep charging forward. If you really want this, you can't let anyone get in your head about it. And that's really all it is. At the end of the day, you choose whether, you know, you want to keep pushing, you choose whether you're going to quit or not, you choose whether you're going to let it get to you. And that's the biggest thing that I can, you know, at least be very honest with and forthright when it comes to females. That's the only difference that I noticed between males and females going through. And after talking to a lot of females who've graduated SERE training and hearing that. So it will dissipate, I'm sure, over time. But, you know, that could potentially happen.
Copy that. Copy that. Thank you. Sergeant Jones, sir, from your perspective, what are some of the challenges you dealt with as you were going through selection?
Yeah, so I guess just some of the challenges that I personally dealt with was cold weather. I know the environmental factors going through training. As I mentioned before, you know, I'm from East Texas, and I know Texas is getting a ton of snow right now, but I'm here to tell you, when I was growing up, we didn't get any kind of cold weather at all. And one of my first phases of training, there was about 5 to 6 feet of snow out in the training area, and that was like my first real exposure to that type of cold weather environment. So that was definitely a challenge that I had to overcome. And then as training progressed, just I spent a lot of time outdoors, growing up, but it was limited to like sports activities. Like I was out on a soccer field, or I was out running, or doing something of that nature. I didn't grow up hunting, fishing, hiking. Didn't really grow up doing a lot of that stuff. So it was all very foreign concepts to me when I was going into training, and I didn't have that background. But as you go through, the cadre members show you how to do everything that they expect you to do, and you have multiple opportunities to make mistakes, really. And learn from those mistakes until you can figure out the techniques and everything, because all that kind of stuff comes with time. So I'd say that was probably one of the bigger challenges, just the environmental aspect, and then just the learning a whole lot of stuff that I had never dealt with before.
One thing I want to mention really quick is I talked to Mr. Delano, who actually does the SERE recruiting and actually gets a lot of the recruits ready to go for SERE, and he gets a lot of the numbers and statistics on failure rates and stuff, and like why on even the past are people failing. I will say back in 2006, I couldn't do a single pull-up before I joined, or before I even decided to do SERE, and that was something that I had to work really hard on. I got a personal trainer and worked really hard on it. So I do know that back in the day that pull-ups was a major reason why females in particular could not pass the PASS test. However, that's not the case anymore. When you guys think of physical fitness now, CrossFit came on the scene, and weightlifting is very big. So there's a lot more females actually lifting heavy and doing pull-ups and stuff like that, and push-ups, where that was not the case back in the day. So no longer are pull-ups an issue. Now it's the run. So with CrossFit and with weightlifting, we've noticed that there is a drop in endurance training and running and cardio. So with that, the run standard actually has actually increased in the SERE PASS test. So I think by 30 seconds. And there's quite more people failing it, not just females, but males alike too. So they were saying that, if there's one thing that you can push to make sure that they're, keeping up on that run. So that's kind of now how it's changed with this day and age.
Copy that. And just real quick, ma'am, to your point that you made out, women still graduating and experiencing that type of discrimination, guys who are on the call, I know some of you are already booked to leave, that basically stops with you right now. Like, don't be that guy in the pipeline harassing a woman because she's a woman. She's just as capable, if not more than you. And then on top of that, if you see it, point it out. You know what I mean? And as a woman, if you experience it, don't be afraid to point it out. Like, it can get routed up as high as it needs to go. So just know that, we all know in the Air Force that's not something we tolerate. We want you guys and girls to know that as well. Cool. Appreciate those responses. Okay, next question here. Sergeant Jones, maybe one for you, sir. How soon after BMT does the selection course start, and has there been any changes to the pipeline due to COVID?
Okay, so right now, the selection course, goes by stock. It's SERE Specialist Training Orientation course, and that takes place almost immediately after BMT. So there's about a 2-week downtime in between when you graduate BMT. You're just going to basically move across the street from Lackland Air Force Base over to Medina or Chapman Annex now. And there's about a 2-week time period in there. And really during that time, you're in processing, you're getting to know the rest of your teammates, and you're given the opportunity to work out, use gym facilities, and just kind of physically and mentally make sure you're ready to go for the course of initial entry. That course is currently 3 weeks. It's 2 weeks on base, followed by a week out in the field, where you get a little bit of field time. And really for that course, I know the COVID pandemic is, kind of thrown a wrench into everything this last year, and it's still continuing to do so, but the SERE pipeline is still going strong. We're following the CDC guidelines and all the guidelines that are put out by higher level Air Force leadership. So, mask wearing, social distancing, making sure there's, hand sanitizer, all the stuff that we need to do to make sure training can continue and to keep the candidates safe that are going through training. So we haven't really seen too much impact. A couple little things here and there, but part of being in SERE is being adaptable, and so adapt and overcome, and we just keep pushing forward.
Copy that. So what are some of the specifics that a candidate can expect, of course, with what you can share while going through training, like whether it's rucking or some of those different phases?
Yeah, so I'll stick with the course of initial entry for right now, just that 3-week course, because that's kind of the first stop. And then if there's questions further on or later on about the tech school and the whole pipeline process, I can answer those. And just for everybody on the line, part of my background, I spent almost the last 10 years. I just PCS'd to a different location, but before that, almost 10 years working somewhere in the SERE pipeline. That is something I was super passionate about and really enjoyed my time there. But the 3-week course down in Texas, there's going to be the physical aspect to it. So you have the pass test, and even though you're taking a pass test with the developer, with your special warfare recruiter before you even come in, you still get tested on it when you show up to the course. And that's just to make sure that people didn't lose anything during BMT. And in my experience, I know that's a concern for some individuals, that they're going to lose some strength and conditioning during BMT. But trust me, I've ran the numbers, and more often than not, people actually get a little bit better on their numbers. So I know it kind of goes against some of the word on the street from what I've heard, but the numbers don't lie. So, and that was like doing a 5-year study. But anyway, so besides the physical aspects, it really boils down to how bad do you want the job, right? Because you're going to have a lot of tasks that are given to you, and most of them probably will be brand new concepts. You're going to be taught how to do these things, and then you're going to be expected to do these things, right? And everybody fails when they're going through training. You're going to fail at some task or some aspect of the day of training. One of the big things that we're looking for are those individuals who can take that failure and learn from it, right? You can accept the criticism, and you just take it, even whether you agree with it or not. Take the criticism, take the feedback that you're given from the cadre members, and just do better the next time around on that objective. And that's a key piece to it. We're also looking at, your commitment level, dependability, basic airmanship things that you'll learn about in BMT, but we really hold our members to a very high standard, because the amount of responsibility that's put on our younger enlisted members is a lot more than a lot of jobs in the Air Force. We're talking about people who are less than 2 years in that are now in charge of running operations and taking groups of 8 to 10 people out into austere environments and making sure that they're giving them the right training and keeping them safe and everything while they're going through that. So we expect a lot of our individuals. But really, if you really want the job, and you don't make excuses when you fail, and you just accept the failure and you learn from it, the cadre will bend over backwards to help see you be successful. Because that's what we're there for. We're training basically training our replacements. And so they're doing everything they can to help you, but a lot of times the ball's in the individual's court.
Nice. So I'm gonna go a couple more questions on the list, and I'm gonna grab the ones from the chat and then come back. Since we're on the course of initial entry, so is it possible to remain vegetarian and go through the SERE training course?
So that's a good question. So I have personally, I have had students in the past that were vegetarian. Now, you can't really be 100% vegetarian going through training. You can be and you can't. So let me explain. So during the pipeline, there are certain objectives, right, that you have to show that you can meet. And so we have to see that you can do these things and that you get these experiences. So we trust the fact that later on down the road, you have the ability to impart that information to other people based off a firsthand account, right? So there are objectives where it calls for dispatching of animals, cleaning, skinning animals, cooking, and eating said animals. So, and that's going to be present throughout the entire pipeline. If you are a vegetarian, you know, there's other times when you're out in the field that there's MREs and everything, and they make vegetarian MREs. So as much as possible, the cadre member and staff throughout the pipeline will work to help accommodate to that, you know, your lifestyle choice if you are a vegetarian. But at the end of the day, if you want the job, there's going to have to be some sacrifice on your part as far as, you know, you're going to have to eat some animals.
One thing to make sure that recruiters do articulate with this, he was saying, you know, you'll have to eat. You know, Sergeant Jones, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't tell you how many animals I've killed in my career in my career during SERE, including rabbits, right? I had a pet rabbit before I even joined, and I remember the recruiter being like, you know, you gotta kill one. And I was like, excuse me. So I will say is some people, you know, choose the vegetarian route because, you know, because they don't want to see animals killed, right? And they prefer not to eat meat because of those things. Some do it for a healthy lifestyle, whatever it might be. Make sure just to articulate the fact that, you know, they will have to show how to properly, not just like skin and prepare this meat, but also they're going to end up having to kill animals as well during SERE training. And think about it, right? Survival situation, you're hungry, you need food, you know, whether it's an animal, insect, whatever, they're going to be killing these things and eating them. So that's something that mentally they're going to have to deal with. So if they know this beforehand and it's something that they don't feel like engaging in, then you can save them some time from going down this route.
Yeah, and Sergeant Zaloudek brings up a good point. I have had a student that showed up to the course and the individual refused to kill the rabbit down at the course of initial entry. And at that point, you know, the cadre staff, our hands are tied. It's a failure to train at that point. You're going to be removed from training. So she's 100% right on that. It's just one of those things that you can be a vegetarian. Just understand that when you're going through training, you're going to be expected to do certain things, i.e. kill and eat animals.
Copy that. Are there any religious accommodations? For example, if someone is not supposed to participate in like physical activities on a Saturday?
So I personally haven't ran into that, but I know that the staff, the cadre staff and the support staff that supports the entire pipeline would work with that member to make sure that any kind of religious accommodations to that nature were taken care of. The only place I think it might get tricky is if there's a specific objective of the course, you know, a syllabus-driven objective that we have to test you on. But if it's something like, you know, nothing on a Saturday, again, I think it'll be situational dependent. I don't want to give you a for sure yes or no, but I do know that everybody will try to work through those situations as best as possible for the member.
Here's the thing though too, I don't know much about religious preferences in regards to that, Sergeant Nixon, but you mentioned like on the weekend and stuff. One thing is once you graduate SERE training, when you become a SERE instructor, you know, you have this 4-week, right, schedule where for 1 week you are working on base and training students through SV80, and then the weekend you go out to the field and you have to be active during the weekend. That is including Saturday and Sunday. You have objectives that you have to teach your students. It has to get done. You cannot not do that. You're out in the field for a whole week and then you return back and then the students go through RT while you're kind of on your R&R week, and then you have a support week and then you continue this 4-week cycle throughout. So that's something to remember too, that even though the cadre might be able to accommodate as much as possible afterwards, when you are graduate and you have your brain expected to do your job, you know, they can't just be like, oh, you're gonna end up skipping every class, and that's the point of you being a SERE instructor. So I don't know how that works and like what specifics, but you know, it's something that whatever, I would say if you do have a member who does have very specific religious preferences, then I would highly suggest reaching out to a SERE specialist to ask them maybe some of these more detailed questions to let the member know what they have and what could and could not work, so they have the realistic information.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Let me head to the chat here, see what we got. Okay, I think we already got that one. Someone asked, what events did you complete in track, and did completing them help you prepare for selection? And what are recommendations training-wise?
Okay, so the events that I completed in track and field, I was a sprinter, so I did the 100, 200, 400, 4x4. So no, it did not really help me much because I do not like long distance running, and you know, like anything in a mile range is just too long. I will say my dad made me run a lot of miles with him and made me do cross country. So luckily, I had some stamina and endurance. I do like to run, so that was fine. But I will say doing a college sport or any sport where they force you to lift weights and they keep you on a training regimen and they have you eating certain foods and they're really just running you into the ground and it's nonstop and it's in your off-duty time, right? When you're not working and at school. I think that probably more so helped me be prepared for SERE training, right? Because you get focused on something and you learn that with enough determination and you know, discipline, you can get it done. You're not always going to be motivated. Motivation is terrible to go off of because not everyone's going to be motivated to do stuff. But if you have discipline, just like I got taught in track and throughout my whole life, that helped me. So I would say that was at least beneficial there.
Copy that. Copy that. All right, let's move on to the next question here. And I am going to get back to the chat here. All right, so the family question, is SERE a family-friendly career field? And about how long can you expect to be out in Fairchild?
I probably have Sergeant Jones take this one since he was married too.
Yeah, no problem. So as a career field, SERE is extremely family-friendly. You know, during the training pipeline, yes, you're busy going through, but like Sergeant Zaloudek was talking about, especially for the first, 4 years of your career, so after training, you have a fairly stable schedule. So that allows you to, actually have a family life and plan things, and you kind of know when you're going to be gone, so you can, plan around that. Your family can actually join you if you graduate the course of initial entry. So after BMT, if you graduate the 3-week course, the SERE Specialist Training Orientation course, then you will get orders to permanent change of station to PCS up to Fairchild Air Force Base. And because of the length of the tech school, families are authorized, immediate families, so like wife, kids kind of thing. Can't bring your parents and brothers and sisters, but your immediate family members can come up and you can get a house on base. You can choose to live off base. You really have a lot of options. And there's military training leaders that can, when that time comes, that can kind of work with you and kind of lay out some of those options for you. But then while you're going through training, since you are gone quite a bit, there's a really good spouses network, and there's a good network of support. Just as I mentioned earlier, SERE is, one big family. And so there's tons of people that are available, whether that be some of your teammates, their family members, or just other people in the SERE community on base. There's a really positive support network. And even after you PCS from Fairchild, you're probably going to end up at another place with another SERE specialist there. And typically families all get along and hang out and all that kind of stuff. So it is a really good environment for family.
Copy. And what are some of those other base locations you guys can go to?
Oh, that's that is a big question. It almost any base with any kind of with like a flying squadron. So almost any Air Force installation with the flying squadron either has a SERE specialist, one or two or three there, or at least they have a billet for it. So again, once our numbers get healthier in the career field, we can start filling some of these positions, some of these other positions. So really, I mean, we have locations all across the globe, so that you can be stationed at. I mean, overseas locations, Germany, Italy, deployed locations you can go to, and then a lot of CONUS places. And that's just on the active duty side. If you include the Guard and Reserve, which we also have SERE specialists in, you almost double the amount of locations that we have people.
Copy that. Copy that. And I noticed you mentioned traveling around quite a bit. Were you referring more to TDYs or temporary duties, as we call them, or deployments? And and this is a question for both of you, what are your TDYs and deployments like?
So yeah, I was referring to both deployments and TDYs, so temporary duty assignments. So as far as the TDYs go, there's a pretty wide range of things SERE specialist has the opportunity to go to. So I know, there's formal schools like Sergeant Zaloudek was mentioning earlier, dive school, jump school, free fall, jump master courses. In addition to that, though, there's a lot of personnel recovery courses that you can have the opportunity to attend. There's some of the more, quote unquote, fun courses, like driving courses, some shooting courses, and a lot of that's designed so if you are working with special tactics or working for Special Operations Command, that you have the same level of training as a lot of the people you're supporting, so you can better support whatever that mission set is. But then, I mean, combat tracker, I mean, there are a ton of places for formal schools and things that you can go to. In addition to that, a lot of exercises. The SERE career field supports a lot of personnel recovery exercises, and, Alaska, out in Vegas, over in the Pacific. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity for those types of things.
Nice. So, Sergeant Zaloudek, ma'am, can you describe to us like what a deployment was like for you?
Sure. So I have been deployed twice. So initially, when you get a deployment, you do team up with a special tactics kind of unit or like squadron that we have, like the office on base, and they get you prepped up and ready for it. Because as a SERE instructor, you don't know really how some of the other branches kind of operate, and they give you the lingo and the entire basically breakdown of how the chain of command works. So just like Sergeant Jones was saying, just like the instructors prepare you for everything, our own guys still prepare you for everything. So when you go out there, traditionally, when we look at SERE, survival, evasion, resistance, and escape, we do have recovery in there as well, right? Recovery as an aspect of getting our guys home. And that's like the biggest thing. And that's the biggest proponent that we're out there for. So we're mainly out there for advisors. We are helping get people the information that they need. We're helping making sure that yes, sometimes people do get the training that they need out there, which can happen from time to time, but traditionally making sure that we're advising those who work in the personal recovery realm that they're doing things correct, they have the information that they need. And then by the time it comes to pick up, personnel and get them back safe, we're there to help facilitate that. You can be with many different entities when you're out and deployed. You can be at Al-Udeid, at the JPRA, and you can be working traditionally just with, the personal recovery cell, and inside there day in, day out, making sure that everything's taken care of. You can also be out and about, which is one of the things that I did. I was traveling all around Afghanistan and doing a lot of advising. I went up north to Maz Sharif to advise the German, they opened up a personal recovery coordination cell, a PRCC, and I helped them advise on how to run and operate that. And then I also was able to give the German extraction team, they wanted some type of, they wanted what they want, like desert training, because all of a sudden these guys, the PJs, were no longer going to be doing recovery operations up north. So the German extraction team was, and they're like, hey, just in case we find ourselves in a scary situation, we will at least know some things to do out here. So there was a lot of different entities, and it wasn't just Air Force that I was training. There was also Army that I was training out there. There was many different other countries, the French, the British Apache pilots, which were awesome, by the way. Those guys are hilarious. So many different entities that you guys get, that we get to teach and train and advise. And so those are things that you can look forward to as a SERE specialist. And that was just from my perspective. I know there's some guys who go out with rescue squadrons, right? They're attached to their PJ unit and they are supporting and advising them the entire time they're out there. There's some guys who are with more specialized units and they might be going on some missions with them. It really kind of depends what squadron that you possibly are attached to and you go out there with, and what your deployment mission is. But there's definitely opportunities to deploy. Again, I think these are things that SERE guys that usually, they would lean forward on later on and try to really make sure they get one.
Copy that. So, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I was just going to add one thing onto the deployment, because it is a pretty popular question that comes up, just so everybody's on the same page. So with SERE specialist deployments, those typically aren't going to happen for anybody for the first 4 years of their career. And the reason behind that is because when you deploy, a lot of times you're going by yourself. And so where some other units deploy is like, one mass unit and they all know each other and they all know their roles. A lot of times SERE specialists are kind of going out alone and unafraid. And we have our training and our pipeline, and then our upgrade training. So 5-level mission ready. There's additional training that you'll receive after you graduate that kind of helps prepare you for a deployment. And we have to make sure that the people that we're sending out, have a good solid foundational knowledge and that they're well-rounded. So when they step over there and they're, basically speaking for personnel recovery and speaking as the subject matter expert on it, that they know what they're talking about.
Jones? Copy that. What is the deployment tempo right now, and is it mandatory to have to deploy, or do you get more of an option as SERE?
So for SERE, the deployment tempo is very different than I believe the rest of the Air Force is, because you know how you have your dwell time, right? And you get on the virtual MPF and they'll tell you what, when your time frame and window is. That's not really how it works in SERE. You're not just going to get tasked with it. So what they do is we have an entire list of all these deployments come down, and it's kind of, slot it for different commands, for AETC, for ACC, for AMC, and they will take individuals who do have, who are deployment ready, right? Which is every SERE guy should be deployment ready. If you join the military and expect not to get deployed, you're probably not, right? Like, you have to realize that this is like what you kind of like raise your right hand to do. So should they expect the deployment? Absolutely, they should. Everyone should at this point when joining. Do you have to deploy? I mean, if you're tasked with one, yes, absolutely. What I will say, has there been SERE guys who've gone their entire career without deploying? Yes. However, we just had our senior NCO, senior leader working group, and they're changing that now. They have noticed that there's a lot of guys that are getting deployment after deployment because they're the only ones who might have the knowledge and experience, but it's keeping everyone else kind of away from that knowledge and experience, or keeping people away from it. So they're going to start going to deployment or to dwell times now. So that's going to be now a thing that's going to eventually change in SERE, where if you have a 7-year dwell time where you've never deployed, guess what? You're going to get tasked for it coming up, so that they can go ahead and start allowing the equal spread of deployments across the SERE career field. So that's something, that's something I would definitely articulate as well there.
Copy that. Great info. We got 3 more questions on the list, and then I'm going to jump into the chat. We'll wrap it up. So I noticed you mentioned working with other Department of Defense personnel, like the Army. Does that happen on a regular basis? And do you also train with and train civilian personnel?
So I'll take the first stab at this one. So And I'll just kind of frame this as, so U.S. Air Force SERE specialists, we're the only dedicated SERE specialist in the entire Department of Defense, right? So the other branches of service have their SERE schools, right? And they have, you know, instructors that are working at those schools, but those instructors come from different AFSCs or MOSs. And it's really just like a temporary duty assignment for those individuals. So they go there, they do a 4-year stint, and they go back to whatever career field they came from. So Air Force SERE specialists, we're the only ones from cradle to grave. We are dedicated SERE specialists and personnel recovery experts. So we're a very highly sought after asset from a lot of the different branches of service, as well as some of the other governmental agencies that are operating in the same areas, you know, FBI, DEA, you know, pretty much anywhere where we have U.S. personnel that are operating in, you know, in and around territories or areas of the world that, you know, you typically think of as, you know, hostile or not necessarily friendly towards the U.S., you know, we're helping to make sure that those people are prepared. So, you know, working with the State Department, working with, you know, the civilians that work for the State Department. I know when I was in Afghanistan, I did a lot of work out of the embassy and was actually part of, you know, their spin up team. So when they had a new group of Department of State individuals come in that were going to be working on like provincial reconstruction teams and people that were going to be going out, you know, I was one of their first stops to make sure that everybody was on the same page when it came to personnel recovery, make sure everybody was good to go with that. And that's just, you know, one example. And like Sergeant Zaloudek was saying, I mean, we're also well known throughout the international community when it comes to the other, you know, some of our allied partners, because we provide a big asset for them as well.
Wow. So with that being said, because that goes into the next question of what are the type of opportunities for SERE specialists in the civilian world? As you said, working with these different types of agencies, I would imagine domestically you have those opportunities. So do you have, say, opportunities to work with CIA, FBI as a civilian coming off of a SERE, whether it's 4, 6, 20 years, as well as international opportunities?
So I would say just kind of like when the discussion when we were talking about some of the different avenues you can go down in the career field, those opportunities, you know, potentially are going to be there. Like you know, nothing's a guarantee. And a lot of times, just depending on where you've worked, who you've, you know, quote unquote, rubbed elbows with, you know, different doors can open up for you. You know, I have known SERE specialists that have gotten out and gone into the FBI. I've known SERE specialists that cross-trained and stayed in the Air Force, but went into OSI and did work in that realm. So really, I mean, those opportunities are there, but it just really boils down to what you as an individual want to do, because you have that end of the spectrum, but you also have, you know, people who are more into, you know, wanting to work outside in the woods aspect of the job. I mean, working for the Department of DNR, you know, you can go be a consultant at various companies. A big thing that, you know, a big selling point for SERE is just the leadership. And I know it's not as, you know, cool sounding as the rest of it, but really the leadership and management experience that you get, you know, from the very beginning in your career really sets you up for a lot of various opportunities down the road. So I've known guys that get out and start their own businesses, guys that go work for major Fortune 500 companies as some type of advisor. So, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity out there.
I'm so glad he hit on that, because what I will say is I've seen, not just in SERE, but I've seen military-wide with all my military friends, is that sometimes we have this kind of like closed set mind, right? Where you get trained in this one job in the military and like you are getting out, right? People are getting their DD-214 and they're sitting there going, I don't know what to do. This is all I've known my whole career, my whole life. And they kind of freak out because they've been in this box, but little do they know the military has trained them in so many different aspects that they can exceed in so many different avenues. And so what I will say in this, you know, realm is the world's your oyster, right? Like, especially in SERE, just like Sergeant Jones said, you get trained so much in leadership and management. So if you want to stay in the SERE realm, there's so many different opportunities for you too. If you want to do something minuscule in the SEAL realm, you could still do that. But if you want to get completely out of it, start your own business, like, you know, be an entrepreneur, like do anything that you want to do, you will be able to do, because I truly believe the way that you were built in SERE, you're prepared for anything and everything, if you know it or not, you are. So I'm saying there's so many different opportunities that whatever you want to do, go for it. So.
Nice, nice. I'm gonna head over to the chat here, grab some questions. All right. So aside from working out, is there anything we can do to prepare ourselves for selection?
Yeah, so I'll take this one. You know, obviously everybody's kind of go-to for getting prepared for this type of training is to work out. And yes, I highly encourage it. And when you show up, you should be in, you know, the best possible shape you can be in, because that's just going to take one less kind of stressor off of your plate. As far as everything else goes, like getting prepared for it, really, for years when I was in the pipeline, I would tell candidates going through, you know, really this training, it's about 20% physical and 80% mental, you know, and the 20% physical, I expect you to be in shape. Like that's just part of the job. But that 80% mental, I mean, that's kind of a big one. And so I would say, you know, really making sure before you make that decision, do your homework on the career field, you know, get excited about it, and then, you know, find whatever's motivating you and keep that motivation as best you can going through, because you're going to have some pretty not fun days during training, right? But the people we're looking for, the people that run into those situations where it just sucks. It's, you know, 33 degrees and raining on you. And so it's not snow, it's just you're soaking wet and it's freezing cold and your gear is soaked. Everybody's in a bad mood. You have to be able to look at those situations and not only push through it, but also find the humor in it, right? And be able to kind of almost like kind of laugh it off and just keep pressing forward. So I would say anything you can do to help build up, you know, mental resiliency for some of those types of things. I know I had a lot of questions I've gotten in the past, you know, are there any books I can read? And I saw a question in the chat earlier. Somebody asked if they should read the Air Force Survival Manual 10, the 64-4. You know, any reading you do, I mean, I think reading is a great thing. But I'm not saying it's a prerequisite. I'm not saying you have to do those things. It is good because you know what you're getting into. But really at the end of the day, I mean, just before you come in, just mentally prepare yourself for the journey, you know, because it's going to be tough and a lot is going to be asked of you. And there's going to be times where you probably feel like quitting. Everybody who goes through training does. But the big difference between those who make it and those who don't is the people who made it didn't make the decision to quit. They didn't give up on themselves, and they just kept pushing forward and taking the feedback given to them from the cadre members. So hopefully that answers your question as far as preparation.
Absolutely.
On the mental aspect a little bit more, people need to be put in uncomfortable situations. If you had a very cush life, SERE is gonna be really hard for you. If you had some really tough times in life, SERE might be pretty easy for you, right? Because you pushed through the hard times. You were resilient and you made it out to the end. So think of things that will push you and make you feel uncomfortable, right? Whether it's like trying a different food, mentally, like think of fear factor, right? Like people had to eat some crazy things. And a lot of the reasons why people failed is because mentally they just weren't prepared and ready. Like they overthought it. They like thought they were gonna get sick, and they did. It was the people who shut off their brain and just ate it like crazy were the ones who actually made it through. So I'm saying maybe eat weird food. Maybe do a CrossFit workout. Those suck. And, you know, try to beat everyone in the class, because you'll end up pushing yourself, because a lot of that is really mental, right? Your body's going to keep going. You're the one who's thinking that you want to quit because it sucks, right? So try to think of, or maybe like try camping out in a really, you know, when it's raining and cold, or, you know, and you don't have a little bit less of, you know, gear, something to make you feel uncomfortable. And one thing I will say with mindset, it's such an important thing. Failing, like you're going to fail. failing happens, right? Quitting should never be an option though. The minute that I truly believe the minute you think that quitting is an option and you think to yourself, I might quit, you go down this horrible snowball effect in your head that's now going to be an end result option. You now made that an option in your book, which means you're going to get closer and closer to quitting each day. That's never an option. That should never be an option. This sucks. Man, this sucks. But you're not quitting, right? Because we have to keep that mindset there. The minute you give yourself an opt-out option, traditionally most people will take it in some of the hardest situations. And I saw that happen throughout the entire time. So just like Sergeant Jones said, you know, a lot of the times we got through what we call the suck. We embrace the suck because it's going to happen. So might as well embrace it with open arms and laugh about that's why I think people in the military, they always say have dark humor. And I won't even say dark humor. I think we deal with certain situations and we laugh about it because that's all we can do, because we're going to deal with it no matter what. So find humor in these situations, make it fun. And I promise you'll end up looking back and go, you know what, that really wasn't as hard as I thought it was.
There we go. I'm going to ask 3 more questions from the chat. And then what I'll do is email you, Master Sergeant Zaloudek and Master Sergeant Jones. It'll be about 3 questions in the email, just so we don't go, too long. I know people probably have some stuff to do. And Sergeant Suarez, Staff Sergeant Suarez, if you're on the call, please be prepared to unmute and ask your question after this next one, because I kind of understand it, but not really. And if you're not here, I'll just send it in the email. How often do you get to fire weapons as a SERE specialist?
Currently right now, during your initial enlistment, that opportunity is probably not going to be there very much, right? You'll have the opportunity obviously during BMT, like everybody does, but after that, at least at this time, there's not a whole lot of focus on weapons familiarization. There is a little bit after graduation. There is a potential for you to get a little more experience doing that, but really those types of things happen a little bit later on, and really it kind of depends on what unit you go to. So, and what their mission set is and what their commander, requires of the members of that unit. So if you're working at a rescue squadron or you're working at a special tactics unit, you're probably going to have more exposure to those types of things than you would at a standard operational support squadron. Right, because that's going to be more of, hey, yeah, if you're going to deploy, you got to go requalify your weapons, so do that. But again, so it's kind of different, just depending on where you're working at. And Sergeant Zaloudek, if you have anything to add to that, definitely do, please.
The only other thing that you might get, additional training on is if you do work at the Special Tactics Squadron at Fairchild. They do have those guys there that are specifically meant to prepare you for your deployment. So a lot of these guys will go through specified shooting courses, maybe like a Griffin group shooting course. They'll be a lot more proficient on handling weapons than most SERE guys get. So therefore, before your deployment, they'll give you additional training besides you just qualifying for your shooting. And yeah, that's really about it.
Copy that. Hit back to the chat here. So I heard the most recent SERE course had the highest graduation rate. What led to the sudden increase in more candidates making it through to graduation?
Okay, that's a good question. So my background, and for those on the line that don't know, before I came to my current assignment, for my last 6 months when I was down in Texas, I was helping out the 330th recruitment squadron as kind of the SERE liaison to the recruitment world. So I was kind of dual hatting, and we started a lot of initiatives over there with, and it's been picked up by a lot of the recruiters, like these Zoom meetings, different education and information campaigns, and just trying to get everybody on the same page. So part of the reason there was such an increase in grad numbers is because I think that the word has gotten out, and we've had more people now coming into the pipeline than we've had really in the past 15, 20 years. So I think that's a big part of it. We have more people coming in. We're naturally going to get more out on the back end. In addition to that, within the last, I want to say about year and a half, Down at the course of initial entry, we kind of revamped how we grade things and what we're looking for. So what I mean by that is we still have the syllabus objectives of the course, but we're also looking a little bit deeper and more at that whole person concept. And so when the candidates are going through, yes, we're seeing if they can complete objectives to the standard, right? Because standards don't change. We need people to complete that, but we're taking a harder look at, how they're getting from point A to point B. So the cadre staff are trained to look for key things when it comes to adaptability, commitment levels, confidence, how good a teammate somebody is. So there's these attributes that are looked at not only by the cadre staff, but also we have SERE psychologists that work down there and assist. And so there's more time now, or I guess there's more highlight on preventative measures. So what I mean by that is if we see somebody that's going down a road early on, 2 or 3 days into the course, and it's being documented that this person is displaying, low confidence, for instance. Well, once this has been brought to the attention of kind of everybody and through how we're kind of grading and analyzing things now, these things pop up to the surface and we're able to talk to that individual before it becomes something that we can't bring them back from. So, right, we can pull them off to the side and just have that real conversation with them like, hey, what's going on? This is what we're seeing. We're seeing your confidence in these areas. It's not as high as, really what we think it should be. So what's going on? And so it's giving us the tools to kind of, I guess, be more proactive versus reactive to those types of situations. So I attribute a lot of the successes with that last class to kind of a culmination of efforts from both the recruitment side of the house and also internally with how we're preparing the candidates.
Nice. The 330th and the SERE community wants you to win all day. All day. Sergeant Suarez, can you unmute, sir, and ask your question, and then I'll ask one final question after that, and
Absolutely,
we'll be good to go.
sir. Comms check. Am I good? Awesome. So
Yes, sir. Good to go.
First off, I want to thank the SERE specialists. You guys absolutely crushed it today. And as a dumb TAC P, I want to tell you that I've probably learned more about SERE in this hour than I ever have. So huge shout out to you guys. But my first question comes from a prior service applicant that has a awesome record, but his wife is going to be a joint spouse. So how does the joint spouse program work with SERE, and will he be PCSing immediately after like the initial course of entry?
Is she in a different branch or is she in the same branch?
She is in a different branch.
So is she in the Army?
Yes.
Okay. So I feel like I can speak this just a little bit because I'm Air Force and my husband's Army.
Perfect.
Okay. So here's the thing. So you said the timeline for prior service for trainees to be accepted in the program. So you're saying, so here's the thing. Once he's in the military, like you need to update your joint spouse code, right? Well, he's already in, so he's going into SERE, correct? So that joint spouse code should already be in there and updated. So here's the thing: when he graduates SERE training, right? He's going to be at Fairchild for a certain period of time. Sadly, that's just the way it works. He has to do his instructor training up there, his instructor roles. Depending on what her job is, if it's flexible, she might be able to live, at Lewis McChord, which is, on the other side of the state, Fairchild. So they might be able to, travel and see each other. If not, then unfortunately, with the way the military works, right, we know that we might have to be long distance for a little bit. However, after that, I will say that leadership has done a really great job of making sure, and it's harder with different branches. That's the problem, right? So if it's Air Force, they really try to work with you a little bit more. It's hard when it's a different branch. So what they can do is if she has a pretty flexible job, he will have a pretty flexible, right, job to go into different positions. Hopefully they could be at a joint base together, possibly, right? So we do have SERE guys at joint base. So I'm at Fort Bragg, North Carolina right now. So there's Pope. He could possibly be out there, and then she could be working there. That's a very large base. He can possibly do, I don't think he'll want to, but maybe work at Fort Benning, the jump school. We have some SERE guys there. She could work there. So there's different options. However, for the initial part, he will have to be up at Fairchild for whatever the amount of time is right now. I know sometimes it's a mandatory 4 years up there, sometimes mandatory 3, depending on how many people and SERE guys they need to keep in the flights. After that is when they can really, you know, he needs to articulate the leadership where he needs to go. They'll do everything they can to get him there or wherever he can be with his spouse.
Awesome.
So they're really good about taking care of their people. So I'll tell you that right now.
Awesome. I appreciate it. You guys just helped me out tons.
Yeah.
Sorry, Nixon, back to you.
Very nice. And the last, oh, thank you, sir. Awesome. Last question. This will be for the both of you. What has been your most memorable moment as a SERE specialist?
I'll go ahead and start it off. It's kind of hard to narrow down to like most memorable moment. So I guess one that I will pick from is I had a few years back, I had the opportunity to go work with the Israeli Defense Force. And so I got to spend, you know, about a month over in Israel, you know, working, advising, and doing some other things. And so being over there and like working with those guys and being able to like hike through the Negev desert, swim in the Dead Sea, go to Jerusalem, like those types of things. I mean, that's a pretty memorable once in a lifetime experience. And, you know, that was all because of the SERE career field and kind of and what we do and how we work with our partner nations. And just kind of the value that we bring to the personal recovery side, because like I've mentioned before, you know, it's noticed from, you know, everybody. And so we're highly sought after for, you know, training, advising, preparing people. Doesn't matter if it's just for U.S. forces. So I'll say for me, that's probably one of the most memorable experiences.
I feel like you're asking me to pick my favorite child right now. It's not even fair at this point. You know, it's strange because I was sitting here thinking to myself, like, okay, I've been through every jump school and I've jumped with like every foreign country possible. And, you know, I've traveled all over the world and I've met celebrities because of the job, done pull-ups for Arnold Schwarzenegger, all these weird random things that like are so cool. And like had some of the best experiences of my life because of SERE. But I think the most memorable one was when I was told for the first time that I'm now a SERE specialist. Like, you know, you work so hard to get to that point. I just remember at the end of the phase and, you know, you're kind of like just on your own, wondering when it's going to be over, trying to survive. And, you know, one of my biggest mentors in my career field, who was my cadre at SST, came up to me and was like, Airman Zaloudek, I have the best news to ever give you in your life, and I'm honored to do it. And I just want to let you know you're now a SERE specialist. And that was like probably one of the coolest moments, because after that moment was solidified, all the rest came to be. So if it wasn't for that moment, you know, none of this would have happened. And so that's probably my most memorable moment.
Incredible. Great stuff. Well, to everyone on the call, if you have Instagram, if you don't, create a profile. I recommend following USAF_Go SERE. A lot of information on there. Sergeant Zaloudek, like you talked about with the celebrity situations, they have some snapshots on there talking about those experiences. So yeah, check that out. But from all of us, we thank both you and Sergeant Jones for being on the call, taking time out of your busy schedule. This was incredible. A lot of great information. We're looking forward to sharing it with folks, and I think it's really going to help our recruiters and to our DEF and any applicants on the call. Is really going to help them figure out what's what and share this information in an effective way. So is there anything else last minute you guys want to share with us before we end the call?
No, just happy to be here and help. So reach out whenever.
Awesome.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I'll echo that. Thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. And our commander says thank you as well. So we really, really appreciate it. To anyone who we didn't get to ask your questions, again, we'll follow up after the fact and get with your recruiters, and we'll get those questions out to you, or those answers out to you. So thanks again for your time. We appreciate it. And everybody have a great day.
You too. Bye.
All right, see you.